Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second ever Linkerd community meeting. Most of you have never seen me before, so I should go ahead and introduce myself. I'm George Miranda, Director of Community here at Buoyant. I just joined Buoyant about 6 or 7 weeks ago, so this is my first time getting to meet and interact with most of you, but hopefully this should be the first opportunity of many. Since one of my responsibilities is to create more opportunities for us to connect with the community like this. But that's enough about me. Let's get to the reason that we're all here, which is our second ever Linkerd community meeting. We're joined today by Oliver and Courtney from Buoyant. Do you want to say hello and introduce yourselves for anybody that isn't already familiar with you?
Oh. Hi, okay, if you didn't hear that, because we're all sitting in the same room, weirdly enough. I was on mute. I'm Courtney, I'm the other part of the marketing team. I joined about 7 or 8 months ago. So George and I will be tag teaming the marketing.
And then, as you may know, I'm Oliver, one of the main authors of Linkerd. Yeah, I'm very happy to be talking about what we've been working on and what we have coming up. So looking forward to it.
Cool, thanks. Unfortunately, William Morgan couldn't join us today. He'll be with us again next time at the next community meeting. But that means that today I will be facilitating our session. So with that, we should talk a little bit about how this format is going to work, because we're going to try something a little bit new. So because this is a community meeting, we want to hear from you, and we want to talk about the things that are relevant to you. But there are lots of different possible topics that are relevant to the Linkerd community. So we're going to approach this a little bit like an unconference. And if you're not familiar, an unconference, unlike a traditional conference, is participant-driven, right? That means that you decide the agenda and you decide the discussion topics. But because this is a remote online meeting, we have to do things a little bit differently. And because there are some things we want to announce as well, we sort of need to mix it up a little bit. So here's how it's going to work. When you reserved your spot to attend this meeting, you were asked to submit questions via the Crowdcast web conference interface, which is the thing you're using now to see this meeting. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see a button labeled Ask a Question. And the questions submitted ahead of time are already loaded in there. You can still go ahead and submit a question right now if you really want to. And what you're submitting are topics that you think should be discussed in the community or that you would like to discuss. And you can go ahead and submit one of those now, but don't start voting yet. There are some rules around how we're going to do that. So the idea is that you can look at any of the topics that have been submitted. And if you see one that you think is particularly relevant or that we should discuss, you're going to go ahead and upvote that. So everyone attending, you have exactly three votes to use. And so the way that you do that is you should see a little up arrow next to any of the topics that are listed. You'd go ahead and click that to upvote the topic that you want to talk about. So go ahead and vote now. Remember, you only get 3 votes. And so we'll give you a minute or two to go ahead and start upvoting discussion topics you think are relevant, or even squeeze a last-minute submission in there. How's that going, Courtney? Do we see that? Yeah? All right. Cool. All right. Cool. So while you're doing that, a couple of other things. If you are unable to vote or if you have any issues using the interface, go ahead and let us know in the Crowdcast chat channel. You should see that over on the right-hand side. You could submit comments or questions. We'll be monitoring that. We won't be looking at the community Slack, although if somebody from Buoyant is on this call and you'd like to monitor Slack and you see something come up, let us know. But mostly we're going to be paying attention to the Crowdcast chat. And so as you're finishing entering your votes, let me just explain or start explaining how the process is going to work. So now that we've gone through discussion topics, we're going to rank them in order. So the other thing about an unconference is that no one is presenting, right? This meeting is about having a discussion. But Crowdcast is set up for presentations. So here's how it's going to work. If your topic is called, Courtney is going to invite you to speak, and we can see your camera and we can hear your microphone. You can tell us a little bit more about the topic that you introduced. You don't have to be an expert in that topic to talk about it, but when we kick off the conversation, if you can just put a little more context around your question or let us know what you're thinking if you're on the call, that's great. We'll go ahead and use that to get a conversation going. So here's how it's also going to work, right? We're going to start talking about this conversation or this topic, and sometimes answers to questions are very short, and sometimes they're very long, right? If they're short, we'll move on. There's nothing else to talk about, right? We're going to give each topic at least 5 minutes of airtime, and if we're done in those 5 minutes, great. There's nothing more to discuss. But sometimes answers are really long, and if they are long and we run over those 5 minutes, at the end of those 5 minutes, I'm going to let you know that we've reached the end of our allotted time. And at that point, using the chat window, we'll do a simple +1 or -1. So if you think that we should keep talking about this topic, go ahead and put in a +1. If you think this topic isn't interesting to you, or we've talked about it enough, go ahead and put in a -1. And then we're going to do a simple majority, right? If this is a non-zero number, we'll keep talking about it. And if it's a 0 or negative number, then we're done. Time is up. But whenever we reach the end of a time box and we've decided we are no longer going to talk about it, we may assign it an action item. And that action item may be, hey, you know what, we need to take it offline and maybe discuss it in Slack with people that are interested, or we need to open a GitHub issue, right? Or maybe we need to figure it out and talk about it at the next community meeting, right? We'll figure out what is the appropriate action and then move on to the next topic. So each topic will get at least 5 minutes of airtime. If we decide to continue talking about it, we'll get at least 5 more. And then after that, the discussion will end and either we'll be done or set an action item for follow-up. And we'll do that so we can get through a number of topics. So we'll do that again, right? We'll have gone through one topic at that point. We'll do it again, and then again, and then again until we run out of time. So I'll pause there to see if there are any questions or comments before we get moving. All right, cool, looks like we're good. All right, so before we get to the open topic portion of today's call, there are a few announcements that we're going to talk about. And so we're going to present a few things. One, I'm going to talk about a new community project that we're doing and make a very quick, brief plug for that. Two, we're going to look at community contributions and highlight some of the work that folks in the community have done to help the Linkerd project. We're going to do a roundup of issues that have been in discourse, which is our support channel. And then we're going to talk about bug fixes or additional work, or highlight some additional things that you might want to know about what's happening in the Linkerd project. And then once we've done all of that, we'll go ahead and move to open discussions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into it and call out the Community Mesh project, which we're doing. So you may have missed this, but there's a blurb that was both on the Linkerd newsletter and that was in the invite that was sent to participate in this meeting. As part of focusing on community, we're putting together a fun little project I'm very excited about. And we're calling it the Linkerd Customer Mesh. And it's pretty simple, right? If you're using Linkerd in your environment, we want to hear about it. We want to know who you are, and we want to know what you're doing. So if you'd like to participate, it's pretty simple. You can go back to either of those emails, and there's a big button that says, I love Linkerd, and you can click on it, and what it does is it puts you in touch with me and Courtney. Or if you don't have that and you're just seeing a recording of this talk, email us directly, george@buoyant.io, that's George @buoyant.io, or Courtney@buoyant.io, and let us know you'd like to participate. It's super fast. We have questions for you, which is really, who are you, what does your company do, and how are you using Linkerd, things like that. Shouldn't take more than 10 to 15 minutes of your time, and you get some fun things in return. I don't want to spoil a surprise. I don't want to say too much about it. We're hoping to unveil it at the next community meeting. But if you would like to participate and you're liking the Linkerd experience, or even if you're not liking the Linkerd experience, let us know. Let us know that you're using it, and let us know who you are. So that's all I'm going to say about that. And I'll pause. Are there any questions or comments before we continue?
No.
All right. Cool. Well, then we're going to move on to highlight some of the contributions that have been made by our awesome user community. And so there have been a number of contributions that were submitted between now and the last time we had a community meeting. So I'm going to call out a few of those because we want to say thank you for your ongoing work. So in no particular order, Christopher Taylor added DNS serve record support. Thank you for that. Andrew Wright improved console health checks. Cyril Ponomaryov upgraded Linkerd, which is awesome. Christoph Tefani de Reaper upgraded Linkerd Viz to use Prometheus 170. Yay. Marcin Mayron fixed a memory leak in the JSON stream parser. Josh Lieb-Dutois added the prefix option to Prometheus configuration. Thank you very much. And user D. Hay, I'm sorry, D. Hay, I couldn't find your real name, but D. Hay added support for console instance objects. So to tell us a little bit more about that, we're going to invite Eliza to tell us a little bit more about some of these features in depth to let us know what they do. Let's see.
So we can get her on screen.
All right, 1 second. We're going to get Eliza to present. All right, Eliza, you should be able to let us know a little bit about what's going on. And we can hear Eliza speaking in the office, but we can't hear her on the call. Hold on 1 sec while we figure out what's happening. All right, 1 sec, we're figuring this out.
Didn't take.
Please.
1 second. There we go. Yes. Okay, she should be good.
All right, Eliza, go ahead and give it another shot.
Everyone, can you hear me now?
There we go.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we did have a lot of
We can see you, but we can't hear
various
you.
open source. Oh, okay.
Oh, never mind, we can.
Can
Sorry.
you hear me now? All right. So we did have a lot of different open source contributions from community members in the most recent set of releases for Linkerd. Probably the biggest one is the contribution of the DNS serve record namer, which was added by Chris Taylor. This is a namer that allows you to use DNS serve records for service discovery. And this was a pretty big feature set that Chris pretty much wrote and contributed entirely out of the blue. We were pretty happy to see that come in, and Chris also did a lot of follow-on support for some bug fixes and stuff in this namer. So that was a really massive community contribution that we're very thankful for. Then we had a lot of different community pull requests for various fixes and improvements affecting console. The option to filter by node health statuses that was added by Andrew Wright is a pretty big feature. Console has this notion of health statuses where the status of a node is not just Boolean, is it up or down, but it can be in various health states, such as like it can be warning, there's a warning state, and this feature allows the console namer to filter by those health statuses rather than just passing failing. And then we also had support for console service instance objects with custom payloads added by GitHub user at dhay. So multiple improvements to our console support. Then we're very thankful for the fix for the memory leak in the JSON stream parser from Marcin Mejran. That was a pretty major memory leak that was affecting performance in most Linkerd use cases. So really happy to see that fix. And then the prefix option for Prometheus configuration, it allows you to customize in your Prometheus configuration section in your config file the prefix path where Linkerd will report those Prometheus metrics. So that's nice to see. And then, yeah, so the Finagle 7 upgrade was something that we were looking at for a while. And we were planning on doing that internally, and then we saw that pull request came in from Cyril Ponomaryov, and he had done that whole upgrade process for us, which is really great because it's kind of a pain to, you just go through and change everything to use the latest Finagle API, and all that work was done for us, and that was great to see. Cyril also fixed a couple of bugs, did some performance improvements to logging on Kubernetes. That those were all we're very thankful for all of those fixes and improvements. And I think have I gone through the whole list now? I think I have. So those are some of the big community contributions that we've seen recently. We're really thankful for all of those. And if anyone is interested in hearing more details or wants to talk about the contributions that they've made, if we have any of our contributors here today, please, of course, always feel welcome to continue discussing these in Slack. I think that's it.
Cool, thanks, Eliza. Yeah, so again, thank you very much for all of those contributions. Our user community helps make Linkerd better for everyone. So again, we're super thankful for that. We want to say thanks for those contributions. So be on the lookout. We want to send you a few goodies. We'll be trying to track you down, I believe, via Slack, maybe some other channels. And if you don't hear from us, again, reach out directly to either me or Courtney, and we'll be trying to get a hold of you. So if you didn't hear from us, it's because we couldn't find you. All right, so with that, I think we're going to move on next to do a roundup of some discourse issues. And Kevin is going to tell us about that. So Kevin, are you out there?
Should have an invite now.
Kevin, I believe you have an invite available to participate. There we go.
Hello. All right, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, so one sec. I'm gonna talk a little bit about Discourse. So Discourse is our discussion forum for Linkerd. Actually, we had our first Discourse post 6 months ago on April 24th. And so I thought it would be a good time to kind of round up how that forum's going and what kind of participation we're seeing and what types of issues people are getting resolved there. And it's really been pretty helpful for me as somebody who does some Linkerd support to have like a permanent record of support requests and have that indexed by Google. So I think we're getting a lot more traffic to the site. So I'm going to go through just some of the core metrics on Discourse and then provide some colorful commentary of my own about about the top posts on the forum. So anyway, as of today, we have 133 registered users on the site with 23 signing up in the past month. That's good trajectory. There have been 148 separate topics created with questions, and we're averaging about 5 posts per topic. So somebody posts the initial question, and users, community members follow up with advice or responses. And so yeah, we've reached 736 posts in total in 6 months, and yeah, and a really high rate of questions answered too. So that's been really good. So let's see. I thought next I would just talk about some of the things we've seen since the last community meeting, which was on July 26th. We've had 6,500 page views on the Discourse site with an average time per page of 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So that's good. Hopefully people are hanging out and getting their Linkerd questions answered. Yeah, and it's been really interesting to see which of the forum posts are the most popular. Number one is Flavors of Kubernetes, which is our guide about all the different flavors of Kubernetes. By far the most popular page on the Discourse forum. I think this speaks to the frequency of people using Linkerd on Kubernetes and also the many different permutations of configuration options for Kubernetes and people trying to debug that. So like if you're running in Minikube or with a cloud hosting provider or bare metal, if you have CNI enabled, we're sort of seeing a lot of different combinations of Kubernetes configurations, and that sometimes makes it a little hard to configure Linkerd appropriately, but I think the guide has been really helpful and people are getting help on that topic, so it's been good. Second most popular page since the last meeting was the Linkerd 1.1.3 release. I guess this was a big one and included a bunch of H2 support and gRPC improvements, including classified retries and like performance improvements. It also, we hadn't done a release in a while, so I guess folks were pretty excited about that. And then I'll just run through the rest of the list. Debugging the Linkerd setup is number 3. So I think we have a lot of good information on that topic. There's probably more we can do when folks run into issues. Nginx versus Linkerd is another popular topic, and a lot of good discussion there. No hosts are available for Service World 1 is the 5th most popular topic. And you may recognize this if you run through any of the Linkerd examples. We often deploy these Hello World apps, and sometimes if they're not configured correctly, the most common issue is that the Hello service can't route to the World service. People paste that into Google a bunch and then show up this page, but fortunately there's a lot of info there about getting people straightened out, and that's been really good. And let's see, Linkerd with console, also a lot of traffic to that topic. Linkerd performance, and running Linkerd with high availability and zero time deployments, and then network performance. So a lot of questions around performance and the overall viability of running Linkerd in production, and a lot of good discussion there. So that's sort of it. I would love to see more and more participation on Discourse going forward. If you don't have an account yet, sign up. Feel free to jump in and answer questions, provide your opinions. You can even upvote answers. Discourse has its origin in sort of the Stack Overflow world. So if you're familiar with that, it works very similarly. And I think it's a great resource for the community. So I would really like to see folks continue to use it. Yeah, so I think that's about it for Discourse. Check it out. You can still always chat with us in Slack too. But yeah, there we go. I'll turn it back over to George.
Cool, thanks, Kevin. That was super helpful. Actually, I really enjoyed that. That was very informative for me. All right, the last bit of presented content that we have before we get to open discussion is going to come from Oliver, talking to us about bug fixes, some additional work to call out and highlight that may not have originated from the community. So, Oliver, do you want to go ahead and kick that off?
Hello, everyone. First things first. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm good. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, yeah, so first things first, I need to look right. Second thing, yeah, so our office is, we're not in the same closet we were in last time we did a community meeting, which is really nice. So if you're in San Francisco, please give us a ping on Slack. I'd love to have you stop by. We have a little nice space here to talk to you now. So looking forward to meeting you. Yeah, so beyond that, I wanted to go over kind of the themes of Linkerd development over the past couple months since we had our last meeting. One big set of changes and probably big set of debugging issues on a lot of people in Slack and Discourse has been things around the Kubernetes API. A bunch of that work initiated around performance concerns on watching all of the services at once effectively in the Kubernetes service. And so we made that more fine-grained and moved to from list watches to object watches in Kubernetes. And it turns out that those APIs behave quite differently. And so bumping up against some bugs in various versions of the Kubernetes API, as well as reconciling these very minor differences in watch behavior between the APIs, took us several releases to stabilize, unfortunately. But I think in 1.3.1, we have a pretty good handle of things. I know that the watch APIs are still changing in Kubernetes because we read a bunch of that code while we were debugging it. But I would recommend anyone who's doing any sort of DTAB storage or using Kubernetes for service discovery probably should be moving towards Linkerd 1.3.1 or greater, especially if you're in like a post 1.2 release. So please keep that in mind if you're on the recent Linkerd version. Around that time, just in this last release, we've been doing some additional Istio integrations. Istio precondition checking was implemented in the last
Yeah, sorry, we lost Oliver. Hold on, he's moving over here.
All right. Sorry about that. More technical difficulties. Yeah, it's, the other thing has been Istio precondition checking. So that's a policy function that allows you to basically write your own policy service that determines whether a request is allowed through or not. And that should be released in the last, most recent Linkerd release yesterday. So please test that and let us know how it works. As I mentioned before, we had the serve record support added, which has been, I've been surprised no one's really asked for that up until now. But it's really nice to see that kind of round out the feature set. Lets Linkerd work in many more environments. Oh, and another big thread has been around console efficiency. And so we had a user whose name is escaping me, but I think it was mentioned before, who was noticing that in very large volatile console clusters where there's constantly things churning, the Linkerd or Namerd CPU usage should be quite a bit higher than expected. And so we restructured the watches in the console API, very similar to the way we restructured the watches in the Kubernetes API, to be should be a lot more CPU efficient in large active deployments. One of the other features I'm particularly excited about is another Kubernetes feature, is the config map interpreter. And so the idea here is that we can effectively remove Namerd from Kubernetes deployments and still retain the dynamic routing functionality. And we do that by having Linkerd watch the config map APIs directly and just pull dtabs down as config maps. And so if you prefer to install dtabs with kubectl apply, you can do that now, and the config map interpreter will pick up those changes. If you are going to do that, I remind you to use 1.3.1 or greater, because there was a bug that will let you. Oh, and actually, this one's from a while ago. We've been, another big theme of work here has been getting the H2 feature set kind of stabilized and ready for production. One of our users, BigCommerce, and Zach there specifically, has been doing a lot of work to make that happen, which has been wonderful to have that sort of contributions, and he's done a lot of great debugging work and given us really good detailed information, diagnostic information. And he helped us track down a problem that was introduced when we started doing gRPC stream classification in H2, where we were effectively holding on to not freeing buffers that need to be freed, and not releasing flow control that need to be released, and that would cause issues after days of uptime. And so after a lot of debugging from a few people at different companies, we were able to get that fixed. At this point, I think and this is preempting a question that I saw, we're getting pretty close to being able to consider the H2 and mesh APIs as stable. We have a number of production users there that all seem quite happy at this point. And so I think we'll probably remove the experimental flag in an upcoming release, barring any further known issues. There's one issue right now that we're looking at related to the Mesh API. This shouldn't block the H2 stabilization. It may prevent us from marking the Mesh API stable, specifically around Calico and CNI Kubernetes deployments, which turn out are remarkably hard to reproduce. So if anyone has a Calico or CNI Kubernetes cluster and wants to help us debug something, or at least explain how to set up a cluster like that, because we can't figure it out no matter what documents you read, we'd actually really like some help there. That would be a great, really good help for us to debug that. Yeah, the other thing that I think we've been changing recently, and I want to communicate extra especially, is that we're trying to, we think you should get off the StatsD telemeter from using it, basically. The StatsD telemeter is quite resource intensive, or it's lossy. And so you either lose a bunch of data, or you are sending lots and lots of UDP traffic from the KVM, which is not great. And so we're really prefer people to use the InfluxDB line telemeter to Telegraph, and Telegraph can report to StatsD or InfluxDB directly, or any number of things. So I really encourage you to move off of the StatsD telemeter if at all possible. If you love StatsD and think it's great and you want to continue using it, I'd also be really interested in hearing more about that. So yeah, let us know there. And there's some other things to talk about, but we'll address in the questions later.
Cool, thanks, Oliver. See, sometimes it works out that we're in the same room together, as weird as that setup is. Cool, so that moves us on to the open discussion portion of today's meeting. And so we're gonna go through, and so again, what we're going to do is time box these. We're gonna have at least an initial 5-minute discussion. If you have something that you would like to add to the discussion, let us know via the chat channel. Courtney will enable you to speak and contribute. And given Oliver's coverage of StatsD and some of what's happening with that project, one of the top upvoted questions is, what do people like about StatsD? So it seems you want to talk about that. I'll give you a minute to let us know if you want to contribute to that conversation so that Courtney can set you up. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the other most popular question. And the question is, by RFC, HTTP 1 and HTTP 2 share the same port. When will Linkerd support port sharing between HTTP 1 and HTTP 2? I'll kick it off to Oliver to get us started.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's definitely a deficiency of the current setup. And so we've been focused primarily on feature stabilization, so having operability for gRPC in the router before focusing on that, just because that's been a higher priority. We also have some other work going on outside of Linkerd right now around this kind of listener and protocol grade stuff. That we're figuring out how this interacts directly there. But I think it's either the case that we will, once we declare the H2 feature set as stable, we'll add on the necessary pipelines in Netty to do that upgrade. It's just, there are very different code bases right now, and there's no common typing between them. And so we have to figure out how to upgrade HTTP into H2 or to do something slightly more clever than that. So there's just a bit of structural work that needs to change in Linkerd to make that possible. So I think we'll expect to support that. The exact implementation details are still being figured out, but it'll happen after H2 is more stable.
I haven't heard from Ryan.
All right. So Ryan, if you're out there, let us know if you want to add anything to that topic, since that was introduced by you. We don't appear to have any questions.
Ryan says yes, okay.
Cool. All right, Ryan's going to join us.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan, you should have an invite to be able to contribute. Oh, Ryan tells us he's happy with the answer.
Okay.
All right, great. Thanks, Ryan. With that, the other popular topic was looking at what people like about StatsD. So I think Oliver sort of kicked this off a little bit. Maybe do you want to give us some more context around the kinds of things that you're looking for, the kinds of input? And then we'll
I mean, I think it's sort of a surprisingly common piece of software that we run into, and I find it's just deployed everywhere, it seems, and it doesn't seem very, well, no value judgments on that, but I don't really understand all the reasoning behind it. I think there's other tools I prefer out there. And so I'm just wondering if anyone wants to talk about why they're using StatsD. Is it a choice? Do they like it? Are they stuck with it? Anything around StatsD and the systems behind that would be interesting to me.
Yeah, I guess raise your hand or put a thumbs up in the chat if you've got an answer.
Yeah, so go ahead and put a thumbs up in the chat if you want to let us know what you think.
Or maybe everyone was also wondering why people like StatsD.
It could be. It could just be an open question, like, why on earth do you like StatsD?
Don't like that StatsD.
All right. Well, we'll see if anyone gets excited about StatsD. But yeah.
All right. Well, then we'll circle back. If anybody wants to let us know what you like about StatsD, it's something that we're definitely very interested in.
Yeah.
So, cool. Moving on, in terms of topics and questions, there is a question around when Linkerd will support dynamic configuration and TLS certificate reloading. That was also submitted by Ryan.
Ryan's got a bunch of good questions.
Ryan does have a bunch of good questions. Ryan, would you like to ask or tell us a little bit more about what it is you're looking for, or just give us some context to what it is you want to discuss in this topic? All right, you should have an invite to go ahead and share your camera and your microphone, so let us know what you're thinking.
Hello. So
Hey, Ryan.
So I'm at Salesforce, and we're using Linkerd currently. We're trying to implement mutual TLS, and we've got some internal infrastructure to dynamically cycle our TLS certificates periodically. So the question becomes, how do we do this without having to completely tear down and restart Linkerd?
Fair question. Yeah, so I think that's exactly right. That it's not, that part of Linkerd hasn't dynamic. And so as we started to look at this, I think earlier in the summer, we started to build this kind of richer control interface into Namerd, the mesh API there. And that was going to be the vehicle that we use for propagating dynamic configuration. And as we got into that, we realized that there are a bunch of parts of the API we didn't like and wanted to fix some things internally before we drove forward. So that's kind of the context of there's work going on there that's just not in the, being seen in the kind of API layer yet, because there's been some structural changes. And so one of the changes was the rebuilding of stacks dynamically based on a file watch. And in the most recent Finagle release, they also added another dynamic, a different dynamic configuration primitive into Finagle. And so that threw a little bit of a wrench in that review, and we had to stop and figure out if we were going to use their dynamic configuration or the one we just implemented. And that was, I think, in the 1.3 release or shortly before that. And so at this point, it's still an active area of discussion. I think for the TLS stuff, we certainly should have a story for that earlier, because that's just a simple file reload, and I think that'll be easier to do before we're doing full policy reloads. So what I'd like to do is try to take this on as a case-by-case thing. So I think TLS will be easier and higher priority to fix than, for instance, I don't know, the retry policies or something like that. We may want to decouple those fixes.
Getting TLS out earlier would be wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. So we've recently hired, Buoyant's recently hired somebody who's been very, very helpful in helping us understand the kind of modern TLS infrastructure. And yeah, I expect we'll be doing a lot more work in this space over the next couple of releases. And I think actually, if I know you also had a question about Spiffy. And it may be a good time to just answer that as well, since it's kind of in the same domain. And the question is basically, when is Linkerd going to support Spiffy, I think? Yep. Yeah. Yeah, so my question for you, what's the context of your interest in Spiffy? Is that like a serious production thing, or just kind of a curiosity of, is Linkerd going to add support for it?
From what I can tell, it looks like the kind of the mesh world seems to be converging on Spiffy. Oh, there's a lot of interest going on publicly. So in order to, is that something they're going to do?
Yeah, okay, that's a fair question. So we've actually, Brian Smith, the fellow Buoyant hired recently, we've had him working very closely with the Spiffy community. In fact, if you go look at their repo, you'll see a bunch of his work on the RFC side and the spec side of things. So we're getting very involved in understanding the details of implementing it. As it is right now, there is no real implementation that we can integrate with. I know it's coming. There will be one, I think, early next year that we'll be able to start using. That's being written by the folks at SkyTel. And so we're looking at the various auth streams going on right now. So there's like a bunch of auth work going on in the Kubernetes ecosystem. There's a bunch of auth work going on in the Spiffy thing, which is a little bit separate, though they touch. And we will definitely be adopting a bunch of new features in that space. Whether it's exactly Spiffy or not kind of determines on whether the ecosystem is there to integrate with, basically. So they're just slightly different key schemes and things like this that we will be open to supporting, but are going to be prioritized based on what users are actually have available to us.
So for the roadmap for things like TLS cert reload or Spiffy, like days, weeks, months?
TLS cert reload is certainly, I think, in a shorter term goal. Spiffy, there's still like the spec is still moving. And so we're trying to participate in that process to make sure that we know what we're implementing and have the right things there. So yeah, I think we should get a ticket on TLS reloading if we don't have one. Certainly.
Cool, thanks. All right, so let's look at some of our questions. So we've actually made some pretty good progress here. So we talked about HTTP1 and HTTP2. Last call, does anybody want to talk about StatsD? Do we have anyone on the call that is actually using StatsD and can tell us what they like? If you are using StatsD, go ahead and let us know with a thumbs up. And then let's see, we have another topic that's risen to the top. What remains before H2 support is no longer experimental? I believe that Oliver may call to this a little bit earlier. But let's see, this was actually introduced by Kevin. So Kevin, do you want to kick off the discussion and let us know what you were thinking?
Sure, yeah. Let's see. So H2 support been around for a while now, still has experimental flag. We actually have a Linkerd issue that tracks this. It is 854, and there's a couple things remaining, I think, in the ticket, but I think we're getting very close. So I thought it would be good to talk about what remains and make sure we're not missing anything else. So some of the things that were blockers from the initial implementation were stats visibility, and I think now we've reached like good telemetry data on H2 routers. Tracing support has been fully implemented. Response classification and automatic retries of failed responses went into the 1.1.3 release. We needed parity for the identifiers that H2 offers with the H1 identifiers, and then there were some correctness and performance fixes that have gone in. So I think the support for H2 has really improved over the last couple months. According to the ticket, looks like we're still missing using pooled buffers, although I actually think we may have added that, so maybe we just need to update the ticket, and access logging. So I just want to make sure those are sort of on people's radar, and if there's anything else that we're missing before we take it out of experimental, we should talk about that now. And I would probably turn it over to Oliver at this point.
Yeah, I think that that's fair. We can probably honestly declare it stable without things like access logging enabled and fix those on a case-by-case basis. So the real requirement from my point of view has been it being used in production without known issues for some time. And I think we're now at that point where we've had several releases and not had to touch H2 at all, which is where we'd like to be. And it is being used in production, which is the important thing. So maybe in 1.3.2 or 1.4.0, whichever happens first.
Cool. Yeah, that works for me. And I guess if anyone else has other feature requests or for H2 and wants to talk about them now, we'd be happy to go over them too. Yeah, I would, following up on Ryan's comment, I would love to see single port support for H1 and H2, but that comes sort of after we get H2 stabilized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are a few ways of implementing that. The context here is that Finagle's HTTP implementation did add support for HTTP2, but it is not sufficient for gRPC. And so if we wanted to just use Finagle's HTTP implementation to serve everything on one port, we could probably do that without a lot of work. But that would not work for gRPC applications, which is like unacceptable in my view. So we basically have an entire different HTTP stack. It's still built on NetEase, but we're not reusing any of the Finagle HTTP code in the Linkerd H2 router. We're using all the Finagle core code, but none of the HTTP specific code. And so to support both request types probably means modeling HTTP1 as HTTP2 internally.
Yep.
It also means that we need, on the client side, either smarter ALPN negotiation or service discovery that indicates what protocol is spoken. And so there are a few operational complexities there that, and maybe the LPN thing is just the right thing to do. There are a few ways to implement this. So I think we're serious about that, but it's been secondary to stabilizing the internals.
Cool. All right. Works for me. You want to take it over, George?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at the clock, it seems like we have time for maybe one or two more questions. And let's see. Zolt has a question. Can Linkerd provide 100% resiliency for my apps, or should it be kind of a shared responsibility between Linkerd and my app? So are you on the call, Zolt? Do you want to let us know a little bit more about what you're thinking or put in some context there? I think you have an invite to participate. Cool, and you're going to join us. We can hear you.
Ah, cool. I'm sorry, I don't have cam at the moment, so you cannot see me. So the question is about what should I have at the application side to provide 100% or maximum resiliency? And I'm thinking about the case when I know I have two different downstream dependencies that I would like to call. Should I have bulkheading applied for these two different downstream dependencies? Should I have separated thread pools for these calls, or it is absolutely not necessary?
That's a good question. Thanks, Sol. So I think, yes, a layered approach to resiliency is important. I think it's very hard to just have a silver bullet solution there. But it is important to understand how the solutions compose together and where to be applied. So things like retries, for instance, make a lot of sense if they can be implemented in Linkerd because we can manage retry budgets and things like that, which help prevent worse outages, right? They help limit the scope of outages. As far as things like having thread pools and things like that, well, Linkerd itself is quite asynchronous and reuses has a common thread pool for doing kind of all of the operational work, the netty model. So it's hard for individual services to dominate the thread pool, but we can also apply kind of traffic constraints there and limit the number of requests or the number of concurrent requests or the number of concurrent connections between endpoints at Linkerd, which allows you to kind of do that sort of traffic shaping. In some of our newer work, we're thinking more deeply around prioritization and using HV2 prioritization and tying that into the thread pooling, which is an interesting direction. But I think it's important to think about what the application should be resilient for. There's things that Linkerd just can't know about, or the configuration isn't currently expressive enough to describe these things, in which case I'd love to hear more about those use cases. Yeah, I think it's important for the application to have a set of concerns around the application health and the service health of itself, independently of the kind of network and infrastructure concerns. So what Linkerd should really be trying to take over or take on is there's an instance that's been rescheduled, and that we won't lose a bunch of requests because of that. We can be there. And another big philosophical thing behind Linkerd is that we want to kind of allow for failure in the system. We don't want to have a system that has no failure. We want to build systems that admit failure, and we have the right tools in the right places to account for those things. So for instance, even Finagle's load balancing, or Linkerd's load balancing, operates on the assumption that it will send some slower requests to learn where slowness is. And it'll retry some slownesses to see if they become faster and things like that. And so we allow some suboptimal work to have a more global optimization. So yeah, I'd be certainly interested to talk more about the individual goals, resilience goals. But yeah, I think a layered approach is good, but also making sure that the things compose, like retries can compose quite poorly. If you're retrying multiple layers of the stack, you can invalidate a lot of your budgeting retries. So these things are a little tricky to think about sometimes. Sorry, that was a very long, rambling answer. But
yeah, thanks a lot.
Cool, and that actually was right at the 5-minute mark. So perfect. Yeah, and we are almost at the top of the hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close this out because we have a couple of small other announcements to make. The next Linkerd community meeting will be taking place at KubeCon, which happens in Austin, Texas, the first week of December 6th through 8th. If you plan to attend KubeCon or Cloud Native Con, go ahead and let us know because we'd love to see you there and we'd love to talk to you. So go ahead, reach out, again, either to myself or Courtney. We'd love to put together some events for our customers. So if you plan to attend or you're thinking about attending but you're on the fence, let us know because we'd love to make it easier as well. We have some fun things planned for that community meeting. We have a number of announcements to make. We're looking forward to it, so hopefully we'll see you there. And again, if you have any other questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to any of us on the Linkerd Slack. So with that, thank you very much for attending this meeting, and we'll see you at the next one. Until next time.
Bye. Thank you.